What happens when a mighty king falls in love with a handmaiden but finds her ill, answering to no cure? How does a sage heal her with his secret method? And what is his healing question we don't dare to ask ourselves? Rumi's first tale is not just a love story. It's a mirror that shows us the truth behind our sufferings, while we fail to understand each other and express ourselves, and what it takes to heal and grow. Once upon a time, there was a mighty king. He was young and handsome. His court was filled with luxury, his lands vast and his power unmatched. He lacked nothing except for one, the taste of true love and desire. Until one day, while out on a royal hunt, he spotted a beautiful handmaiden. With a face radiant as the moon, eyes like dawn, a figure as graceful as a cypress, and steps gentle like the morning breeze. Her single glance stole the king's heart, and her presence arrested the king like an arrow to the heart. The king knew at once that he couldn't live without her. In Rumi's words, his royal heart and soul became the servant to the servant girl. The king ordered his men to bring the girl to the palace. He dressed her in silk, showered her in gold, and gave her every pleasure he knew. He made her the center of his world. For the first time in his life, he felt whole. But love does not obey the rules of the kings and always reveals more than we expect. In Rumi's words, we can never feel complete. We always desire for something more, and we always lack something. Like somebody holding a pitcher, searching for water in thirst, but once finding a stream, breaking the vase. Soon the handmaiden fell ill. The fever took over her body. Her rosy cheeks faded. Her slender figure shivered, and her laughter silenced. She withered like a flower, and her sighs could melt even the hardest of the hearts. The king, desperate and terrified, summoned the kingdom's best physicians. They gathered around her, examined her, and gave her every potion and herb known to them. But nothing seemed to work, for they were arrogant. They claimed power and said, "We have the cure for everything and everyone," but never said, "If God wills, we will heal." The handmaiden withered as the king wept beside her, powerless and devastated. His heart was broken and he was shattered. His throne felt empty and his power and treasures meant nothing. In Rumi's words, the girl grew thin from illness, frail as a strand of hair, and the king's eyes wept blood, flowing like a stream in despair. One night, in the depth of his sorrow, the king ran to the mosque. He fell on his knees and begged the divine for a healer, a guide. His prayers pierced the heavens. In Rumi's words, when the waves of the cry rose from the depths of his soul, the oceans of mercy began to boil and roll. He prayed and wept until he fell asleep in his own tears. That night he had a dream. In that dream, a voice told him, "O king, do not fear, for your cure is near. Tomorrow a messenger will come to you from us. Trust him, for we do. He is a wise man, and he will heal the handmaiden." The next morning, as the king was staring impatiently at the gates, a traveler arrived, a wise man, old and calm. He was not a man of many words. He was graceful as the crescent of the moon in the sky. In Rumi's words, he was like a shining sun amidst the shadows. Some say he is the reflection of Rumi's own Shams. The king brought the sage to the palace. He knew at once what was wrong with the handmaiden. In Rumi's words, the scent of every smoke reveals the secrets of the wood it rose from. Although the sage knew the secret of the handmaiden, he asked to be alone with her, because he knew the true healing required a safe space. where one can talk and heart can reveal its secrets without the fear of judgment or exposure. In that sacred space, he sat beside the handmaiden, holding her wrist, not just to take her pulse, but to feel the rhythm of her soul. He was there to truly hear and see her, not to rush to fix her without knowing what she was really going through. He started asking questions about her past, the cities she'd been to, and the people she had known. Her pulse was steady until she heard one name, Samarkand. At that word, her pulse raced, her face changed color, and her eyes welled, and the walls broke. She told the sage about the secret love she had for a young goldsmith in Samarkand. She had been torn from him, and her heart had been dying ever since. The sage nodded in compassion, but gently asked the handmaiden to keep this a secret from everyone, including the king. For some truths are too delicate for the word's noise, and when shared too soon, they lose their power to heal. In Rumi's words, when a seed is planted deep inside the earth, it will turn into blossoms and a beautiful garden. But if you take the seed out too soon, it wouldn't turn into any flowers or plants. The sage went to the king and asked him to send for the goldsmith, for he was the key to her healing. The king sent some messengers to Samarkand with royal gifts and garments. When they found the goldsmith, they told him that the king has heard about his brilliance and he wishes to meet the finest craftsman of gold. The goldsmith, dazzled by the honor and seduced by the royal gifts, left everything and everyone behind. He didn't know what he was running to. He arrived at the palace beaming, never guessing what fate awaited him. The handmaiden was rejoiced. The two were reunited, and her health started to return. But the sage, wise beyond words, saw what no one else could see. He knew that it wasn't true love, so decided to bring its reality to light. He gave the goldsmith a slow-working potion, a tonic that started to sicken him over time. As his beauty faded, his charm withered, and his strength waned, something inside the girl began to shift. His face, once loved, became his dead skies. The girl had fallen in love with his appearance, his outer glow. So when this glow faded, her love for him faded too. And when the goldsmith died, her love died with him too. The goldsmith's greed led him to his death. And the girl began to see not the man she loved, but the projection of her own longing. What once was an obsession turned into clarity, and the king realized the power of letting go and losing control and acceptance. Sometimes losing what we think we want is the only way we can get what we truly need. Keep watching, because what I'm about to tell you is why I made this video in the first place. We are going to take a deeper look into the mirror that Rumi held for us 700 years ago and break down the messages to transform our emotional lives, the way we see ourselves and our relationships. Real peace comes not from holding tighter, but from letting go. The king had everything he wished for, except for one thing he could not control: the heart of another. No amount of power, wealth, or influence can force healing, inner peace, and love. The king's chase to own love mirrors how we often chase people, happiness, goals, thinking they are something to be caught. True satisfaction, though, begins when we surrender control, not when we gain more of it. In relationships, let's let go of possession, because love cannot be bought or commanded. It is something to be invited and understood. Real wisdom begins where the ego ends. The physicians failed not because they didn't know anything, but because they claimed to know everything and have power to heal without invoking the will of God. This tale critiques ego-based knowledge. When we claim to know everything, we close ourselves off from true understanding. The physicians' arrogance blinded them, and their pride closed the doors on healing. How often do we block our own growth because we're too sure we're right? Growing begins with humility. Whether in therapy, medicine, coaching, or relationships and everyday life, admit that we don't have all the answers. Real wisdom doesn't shout, it listens. The sage didn't prescribe a cure, he just listened to the girl. The handmaiden's illness wasn't physical, it was emotional, but nobody had taken the time to ask her story and listen to her. The sage asked her and listened to her and healed her with no potion or herb, but just with empathy and attention. In our relationships, how often do we truly try to listen and hear without interrupting? Real healing often comes not from any advice or solution, but from being deeply seen and heard. Listening is medicine. Pain softens when it flows through the words. And the moment the story is listened to with care, the grief transforms into grace. Behind any anxious heart is a story ready and waiting to be heard. The soul whispers in silence. The sage asked to be alone with the handmaiden because healing happens in stillness and trust. The healing wasn't public, loud, or external. It required intimacy, privacy, trust, and reflection. Like spiritual growth, it can't happen when we are performing for others. If you're seeking healing, go inwards. Find the spaces where you can be raw and real, not judged. Not every story is ready to be told. The sage asked the handmaiden to keep her story a secret. Some truths lose power when they are exposed too soon. The sage asked the girl to keep her story a secret, not to hide it, but to protect it, because some truths are still growing, and when they are shared too soon, they wither. Everything has a timing. Don't overshare your inner word before it's strong enough to stand. Protect your becoming. Sometimes the heart doesn't need answers, just an unexpected presence. The sage succeeded where the physicians failed. Sometimes the solutions come in the forms we don't expect. The sage didn't look as powerful as the physicians. He didn't claim to be strong and healing. He just observed, listened, and waited. Be open to help from unexpected places. The wisdom you need may not come in the form that you expect or from the people you expect it from, but it will come when you're ready to receive it. Now that we have uncovered the layers of this story, what about you? Which part of this tale reflected your own journey? If one of these insights struck a chord, please drop it in the comments. I'm Messi, and if you're curious about what Rumi says next, please subscribe and stay tuned, because this was just the beginning, and what's coming next might just change how you see everything.